Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talkward. I am Marty Dundix, editor-in-chief of Weekly Humorous Magazine, and this is Talkward, a fun little podcast where professionally funny people come to tell awkward and cringeworthy stories. I'm very excited about today's guest. We have Carlos Greaves on. He has been featured in The New Yorker, NPR, and he's a frequent contributor to McSweeney's. Some of the funniest things I've read there. He's had the top things of the year there 3 years in a row. He has a new book out called Spoilers, Essays That Might Ruin Your Favorite Hollywood Movies. Please welcome to Talkward, Carlos Greaves, everybody.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
This is so exciting. I'm so happy to have you on. We've been online connected in the comedy world friends for such a long time, as many of us are, always just on the emails or just reading people's work. And then to actually see people face to face is always so wonderful. And, such a happy smiling face you have there, Carlos. And you're such a fascinating guy because you are a former mechanical engineer. The whole different world that you lived in. And I want to talk a bit your early career. I mean, now you're a big time comedy writer. You've got stuff all over the place, and you have this book coming out that is focused on kind of movie-based humor, which is, I think, so much fun. I love movies. I love, talking about movies, and the book is so much fun. And I read through it, and it's hilarious. And just the things that you were able to pull out of such popular films, and then kind of zoom in on them, and create such hilarious humor articles based around it is wonderful. So I want to talk about all kinds of stuff. So first, what made you how did you start off starting as a electrical or mechanical engineer and then going into comedy writing?
Yeah, so I was actually electrical engineering. But yeah, I went to college for that, study electrical engineering. And
And what kind
after
of a
college,
school? Is that like an MIT thing? You interned at MIT. You have a funny, embarrassing MIT story.
I do, yes. So I went to school at MIT, worked several summers at MIT.
MIT, come on. This is like one of the top smarty pants colleges in the world, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. My grandfather went to MIT and he
Oh,
was
I
a
didn't know
smarty
that.
pants. I
Wow,
have
that's
I have a photo in my den, and it's from, I mean, it's probably from like the 40s or maybe the 30s. And it's his
wow.
graduation day at MIT, and it's him with one of his chums, and they have the cap and gown on at MIT. So
Well,
that's
that's
so
awesome.
exciting. So you're at MIT, and what's that happening? And what happens there?
Yeah, so I was at MIT, and then senior year, I mean, honestly, I've kind of had like several existential crises within studying electrical engineering and not being sure, like, what is this what I actually want to be doing? And several years, after graduating, the same kind of thing. It's just been always this recurring thing, and I think it speaks to the fact that I'm not working as an electrical engineer anymore, that there was just something about it that's never quite, it's just never was my thing. um and there's a lot I love about engineering. I think just I've always enjoyed math and science. I think it's fascinating. But basically I got to this point where senior year I took a class on filmmaking just as an elective, purely for fun. And that it just like had like a lightning bolt moment of like, wow, I love filmmaking. I never thought this is something I would enjoy, just the process of writing and then editing and putting together films. And after college, I just met other people in the Boston area who were into film also, and we would just shoot like little short films, short video sketches, all kinds of things. And that kind of slowly transitioned into me doing sketch comedy at Improv Boston, wanting to actually get on stage and just get a little bit more of like a faster feedback loop. Because like you film something and you spend 6 months like writing, casting, editing, filming, editing, all of that.
Right.
And then you put it out there. But yeah, started to get like some stage time and met a lot of great people through that, including Lucy Huber, who's now an assistant editor at McSweeney's, and Lynn Sue, who's a cartoonist at the New Yorker. So that was also a fantastic way to just meet a lot of other really funny people. And that also kind of slowly transitioned into me trying to write for McSweeney's, New Yorker, trying to do some short humor. And especially then in 2020, when like all of live comedy kind of went away, writing just became like this outlet for me to keep doing comedic work. And with everything that was going on too, I've always been drawn to like politics and just pop culture and the news cycle and everything. So I've just kind of gravitated to topical satire for that reason. And 2020 was just a year with no shortage of things to write about. So that's kind of where I got my start. And that's eventually led to teaching some classes at Second City and having a few other freelancing gigs. And then suddenly I was able to leave my engineering job and give this a shot. So it's been a blast. But
That's incredible. It's such an interesting thing because and they're obviously two such different, professions. But you could be proficient in both of them. They're just like two different parts of your brain that you're using. They're both are probably, they're problem solving. When you boil everything down like that, it's creative problem solving. And,
yeah,
the engineering, you're figuring something out, and with comedy, you're figuring out what the joke is and what the story is and how to make it, funny and how to find that perfect tone. But I would say the comedy is a little bit more fun than the engineering, probably.
it's definitely
Um,
more fun. And it's funny because I enjoy engineering, but it was not like the thing that gets me out of bed.
right.
Yeah. So and it is very much like the same kind of problem solving skills. And I think the engineering background kind of helps in that way of just like being able to think about things kind of in a process
You
oriented
can
way.
be
But
logical. You can be that
right.
kind of like, that very black and white computer type, like analytical, sometimes people get too emotional about things and they don't see it because they get all bogged down by other things. But I think with your people that are like engineers or, architects, like they're dealing with numbers and space and things, and it's just a different way of thinking, and those organizational habits can be used elsewhere better. So it's like you might be a more effective comedy writer because of the engineering.
I think so.
Your
Yeah,
stuff
for
is like
sure.
because your writing is so good. Like your writing is it's so tight and it's so direct, and you get to the point. You're not like meandering. Like you hit that so fast, and your book is so good, and the collection and the articles that are in this book. I mean, people are gonna love this book, Carlos. This book is it's fantastic. It has a great niche direction of movies. Like things are movie specific, and you do such a good job of writing in a way that's not repetitive, and you find new ways to look at movies or fun ways to pull out article ideas from known characters. And I'm going to throw up the let's see, let's have the cover up. If people are watching this, if you're listening to this, the cover is fantastic. Sorry you can't see it. Invest in YouTube, people, but that's okay. But if you're looking at it, it's a great cover for the book called Spoilers: Essays That Might Ruin Your Favorite Hollywood Movies. And there's a great illustration on the cover of some famous Hollywood personalities. Terminator, we have Little Mermaid, we have Forrest Gump. And they're all in a movie theater and looking bored, actually, looking pretty bored. Superman sleeping in the back, but it looks great. Who did the cover art for your book?
Yeah. So Alana McCarthy did the cover. She's an illustrator and she's done a number of books. And yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, we kind of worked together on this idea of they're actually at the DMV, so they're waiting to get their number called. Yeah, I think you mentioned
Oh,
the
they're at the
Terminator. He's
DMV. They
he's
are at the
behind the desk there.
DMV. The
Um,
Terminator is the DMV person.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. So, yeah, she was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I self-published the book and I just found a number of fantastic people to work with. So Alana was fantastic on illustrating the cover, and Ginny Hogan was my editor because
Jeannie Hogan's great. She's
yeah,
such a great she's a wonderful writer.
she's fabulous. She's hilarious. And, we were kind of friends, similar situation to like a lot of people in this online humor world. You just kind of like slowly meet each other and get to know each other's work. And then when I was, self-publishing this book, I was like, okay, who might be a great editor? Like Ginny's, sharp. She has such a great mind for comedy. She was perfect for it. So yeah, it was just like finding all these other great people to
Well,
work
the
with.
stuff's so good, and I know I publish books. I run an imprint called Humorous Books. I've been in the publishing world for a long time, so I know how much of a pain traditional publishing is. and how slow things move. And you know, you have to make a lot of compromises when you're working with a big group of people sometimes. And sometimes, there's advances or maybe there's not advances. Maybe it's based on all kinds of stuff. And what what you did is so interesting because you're very casually downplaying how you publish this book because you're like, I self-publish it. But like self-publishing a book can be so simple. You push a button and you're done. But that's not what you did. You did something that's so much smarter because of this engineering brain of yours. You did a Kickstarter crowdfunding, but you'd made it so wonderful and interesting that you raised like 10 grand to write a book that you wanted to write, and you wanted to write it your way. So you were able to basically give yourself an advance from just people who want to read the book. So it's like you're almost kind of pre-selling the book, but with all these fun things you could offer people, extras and things that you could help with maybe teaching classes, or maybe they get their name, like all these really smart ways to get people to give you funding for the book that you want to make. I went through it. I'm like, this was genius. What a genius way to write a book. This was so wonderful. I wish my name was in this book. Damn it. But I'm definitely going to buy a hard copy. I have the PDF you sent me, and it's so funny. But this book was so funny. I want to hold it and read it like on the beach or like in a place that I can be. I like reading in a physical, flipping the page and giggling along. And that's easier when you have like a physical copy. And I just read on, a screen to prepare for this, but it was so good that I want to like reread it. The stuff that you were writing using Jurassic Park as a comparison for the Trump administration and the 2020 pandemic was just genius. Like all of it. And you wrote many articles about it. And it was like a cascading delight. And we all lived through it. So we knew what was happening in reality. And then you get to read it from the idea of if the pandemic is the Jurassic Park disaster, and how would they deal with it the same way? And it's exactly
Yeah.
right. Like the way that you have like Ian Malcolm is what's his name? Ugh,
Yeah, Fauci. Yeah,
Fauci.
there was like all
Ian
these
Malcolm is
parallels.
Fauci, and all like you made him the perfect parallels. Like all these things fit so well within the disaster of Jurassic Park. And it's great. Instead of masking, it's like they're masking their sense from the Velociraptor attacks. It's so good.
Thanks.
So it's just there's so much quality work in this book. And there's a lot of pieces from McSweeney's, but then there's a lot of pieces that were not that you wrote for this book specifically. So tell me about how you had to fill the book out, because I know that must have been kind of a pain because you have all these things that you do slowly. I know how you write things and they accumulate slowly. And the process of writing one piece for a McSweeney's or a New Yorker is you write one piece, you have a great idea, you submit it. That's how. But then for the book, you probably said, I need to come up with like how many pieces to fill out the rest. And then how do you organize to plan ahead to write literally a bunch of short humor pieces that fit with the ones that you did individually?
Yeah. So yeah, the Jurassic Park piece was kind of the first that was like the first moment where I was like, okay, uh I have this piece about, you know, a movie, using that as like a way in to talk about satire. And I thought like, okay, well maybe what if I like built that out and just did a bunch of these for different movies. And there was like some other pieces that I'd written for McSweeney's. Like I wrote a piece comparing the Terminator to like police brutality, and like why it basically saying like, you know, I can't believe uh, just because they've like turned against humanity doesn't mean we should defund the Terminator program. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, I slowly like had a few of these ideas that I just kept coming back to movies because I've always loved movies. It's this thing that we all kind of can relate to. We've seen all of these classic movies. And so it's just like a very natural way to make these comparisons to like what's going on in the world because we have this like shared frame of reference. So once I had a few of those ideas, I thought, okay, well, I think this could actually be, you know, more than just a couple one-off pieces of McSweeney's. Maybe it could be a whole book. And I started just with like just kind of coming up with a big list of movies in general. Like what's the stuff I like have to hit, right? Star Wars and you know, some of the classic movies, Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption. I was just trying to think of as many movies as I could that, like, you know, the average person would have seen like 80% of them,
Yeah.
right? And there's some, more obscure stuff in there. But yeah, so I just kind of started with that huge list. And then as I had this list, like, I would just, kind of try to brainstorm throughout, just every once in a while think about, like, okay, well, what could I do for Footloose, or like what could I do for the Harry Potter movies. And yeah, I would just kind of like, every once in a while I would just have an idea of like, oh, Footloose, like what if I did something about like the town is super racist because in Footloose there's literally no people of color in the entire movie. And yeah, I was like, so what if it's somebody who's like, it's great that we can dance, but like this town is super racist. It's, imagining like what the backstory is of all these characters who are kind of behind the scenes in these different universes. So yeah, it just kind of gradually, took shape as I like found different ways in for all of these kind of popular movies. And one of the things that, like, when I was first pitching the book, so I did kind of initially start, going through the kind of traditional publishing process. I had spoken to a few literary agents, and after talking to a few, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. A lot of people said like, well, I think it's a tough sell to a publisher. And the one of the things that kept coming up was like, you need to figure out like, why does this have to be a book and not just like a series of individual essays for McSweeney's? Because it
Yeah.
is, it's a lot of short pieces. So that was another thing that kind of played into it, is like, well, there's a lot we can do with this that isn't just short humor. Like, what if I, wrote like a whole lengthy series of letters of, J. Edgar Hoover opening this investigation into Forrest Gump? Because, in the movie, Forrest Gump ends up at these like pivotal moments in US history. Like, that in the 60s, when J. Edgar Hoover was doing, COINTELPRO and all of these like investigations into MLK and the Black Panthers, like, of course, Forrest Gump would have been on his
Yeah.
radar, like,
Like, this
so
guy's everywhere. Why
yeah,
is this guy everywhere? What did
he's
he do?
he's met the president of the United States twice. Like, how, so it became this idea to like do this very long form, series of memos between him and other people in the FBI. And so that expanded into like, that's the longest essay in
Yeah.
the book.
That looks
Um,
great too, and also, like, the way that you present all these pieces, they're designed perfectly. So, for the letters and also for the Superman, seeking asylum with his papers, like his immigration, visa type, application, it looks great. Like, it looks like a government form, and it looks official, and it just adds to the book the humor value. Like, it's not just a bunch of words. The presentation of the humor is really elevated by the way that you have formatted these things to look so funny and so real, and it makes it hit home so much better. um
yeah. And
the Clark Kent one is so this I pulled out a quote from the Clark Kent, him applying for asylum or a visa. The third and final factor, this is Superman getting denied. The third and final factor is whether the United States government feels you will be potentially a financial burden. As impressive as your heroic deeds are, based on your last several years of tax returns, your deeds don't seem to be generating much income. That is so funny. Like, the way that you're able to pick apart and find just really specific funny things that, people don't think of, and you're like, oh God, that's so true. How funny is that? He's not worth it.
Yeah, and a lot of like what I kept coming back to was this idea of bureaucracy and how it would interplay with these characters. And yeah, so like Superman is applying for a green card, or he's applying for a visa, but of course, like, he doesn't have any of the documentation from Krypton. It's all been destroyed. And so once the government finds out that he is not a natural born citizen, he's got to go through the process. And so like what I just tried to find like all the different ways that Superman's life story could kind of interact with that whole process. And yeah, he applies for a visa that's a real visa that's for an alien of extraordinary abilities. And I was like, that's there, there it is right there. So
And it's
Yeah,
all
so
real. Like, it's so funny because you're using all the real stuff, and it's so true. And, the humor is there, and you just have to if you're using the real, format, and you're using the real, parameters to find the humor, in the Superman stuff, and I think that's, like, so clever, and I think that's reflected in so many of your pieces. Like, this, going back to the Velociraptor stuff for the Jurassic Park, and it's just like your attention to detail for the real stuff into making the satire is so good that it plays so well and so consistently throughout the book. And I mean, it's an impressive feat, Carlos, to have a book and having so many of these essays that work so well, but they're all so unique, and so funny. I have something. Are you a big Jurassic Park fan?
I mean, yes, I did. I especially like the first movies. I thought, I haven't gotten into the new reboots as much.
Yeah, me either. I started watching them way late.
Yeah, same
I
here.
got this
But
dumb I got this dumb thing that actually broke in the mail. They're sending me a new one, but it was a Barbasol can. And and it opens up, and it's the embryos go
oh,
inside the Barbizon can. So it actually turns.
that's awesome.
But there's no DNA in it. I have to put like Palmolive dishwasher liquid in it to make it look like they're the dinosaur DNA.
Yeah, there you go.
I like all my movie junk. I have a proton pack in the back here too. I have all kinds of silly stuff. It's fun, the movies. It's fun. I love movies. Like, I mean, obviously you're a movie person. So, I mean, because I mean, you would have to, like, the amount of stuff that's in this book, you are a movie person. And what was your first movie that you saw that you loved in the theater that kind of made you have this love of movies? And what kind of movies are your favorite movies?
That's a great question. I think I do very distinctly remember at some point in the 90s, they like re-released all of the Star Wars movies in theaters.
Hmm.
And I remember going with my dad to those. And yeah, I loved those as a kid. And um I think I've always been drawn more to comedy. So yeah, and it's funny, like my favorite movies are all very like kind of weird, obscure comedies. Like I love Repo Man. It's like,
Repo Man's good.
yeah, it's so
Yeah,
funny
Repo Man.
and satirical. And I've always just kind of been drawn to satire. And yeah, that's such a like beautiful takedown of just 80s, Reagan
Yeah.
America, and like he's eating like the can that says food. And yeah, there's just like so many great moments. So like I like a lot of like kind of weird, obscure comedies. Another great one is In the Loop,
Hmm.
which is like, yeah, Armando Iannucci, it's the same team that did Veep.
Yep.
This is kind of like bridging the gap between their British television show, The Thick of It, and what ended up becoming Veep. So there's a
Yep.
lot of the same characters, and it's like this parody of the lead up into the Iraq War. It's just, I mean, and that movie, just like the joke density is just insane. It's just like it's packed with so many great lines and a fantastic cast. So there's like a lot of satirical comedies, which sort of makes sense given that's like what I've been drawn to in terms of writing. But what was fun about this book was like I got to go back and rewatch all of these movies. So like I went back and watched Shawshank Redemption and was like, oh my god, like this movie is perfect. It's so good. And there was a lot of movies too where I was like, I would watch it and be like, oh god, like how can I criticize like such a perfect film? Like one of the ones that didn't just I could not think of anything for the book was Princess Bride. I'm like, there's nothing to make fun of here. This movie is absolutely flawless. Like, so it was, yeah, it was kind of like a challenge sometimes when it's like a beloved movie that you just
Yeah.
it's hard to find a way in. So that was an interesting.
It would have to only be something with like an offshoot, like a Miracle Max type article, something about what he had been up to before. I don't know, maybe because they kind of caught him after he had retired and he got fired by the Stinking King or something.
Right.
Ah, that is such a good
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. That would be fun.
Ah, I need to go watch that again. I'm now having a flashback of Princess Bride. Ah,
I know it was good. It was like the best job I could ever envision is just like going back and watching a bunch of great movies and then writing about them. Like I I wish I could just keep
The
doing this
Cliffs of
forever.
Insanity. Yeah,
But
that movie had everything.
yeah,
That movie had everything.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what did I want to ask you more about? Oh, we can talk about your embarrassing MIT moment, your Talkward moment. I guess we could talk. Well, are there any current? Did you see the new Indiana Jones? Okay,
I haven't
I
yet.
missed that in theaters. I need to
Yeah.
see it on the. I think I should have seen it in theaters because I feel like they made that movie to see in theaters, and now I'm gonna see it and be like, this could have been better, and it would have been like great in the theater, but I didn't see it in the theater.
I know. Yeah, it's not the
Did you
same on
see
the
that
TV
Barbie?
screen.
Is
I
that good?
did. Yeah. Loved Barbie. Yeah.
Do you have
It was
anything in your
great.
mind
Yeah. I
percolating now that you would want to write more McSweeney stuff based in the movie world? Like, are you kind of in this theme where you're like, this is kind of my thing. I kind of want to keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I it's definitely something that's kind of always in my wheelhouse, and as I was, like, thinking about movies that I felt like the one thing where I didn't do as much of for the book was horror movies, because that's also just not something that, like it's 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 not my favorite genre, but I do like a good horror movie, and there were some ones that, like, I would still love to write about, like, Rosemary's Baby was one of the ones that um, I watched thinking I would write about something for the book. I kind of had some ideas and didn't get to them, but I would definitely circle back to that one because it's just such a like you realize like the part that's creepy about that movie isn't so much like the
Hmm.
Satanism or thinking that all the Satanism is real. It's the fact that the Satanism stuff isn't real, but these cult people like have all this power and influence in New York and like trap these people in this cult, and it's just like this. It's you know you just sit there like gripping the TV, being like, "Get out of there!" You know, Mia Farrow, like run, like
I feel
so.
like
Yeah,
I've only started watching some horror movies, and they have to be like slasher over the top, and then I'm okay with it because 'cause I'm like, "Ah, that's just ridiculous," like, they stab that guy so much, it's this is all not it's so graphic that it's not realistic, and I feel like
yeah.
that and they have been making a genre of that type of slasher that's like a slasher comedy movie, which I do enjoy, and I do think that's kind of funny. Like, did you see they made a movie called Freaky, and it was kinda like a body switching movie with the tall guy who was in, like, Wedding Crashers. Who am I thinking of? Uh, uh,
Oh,
uh, uh,
Vince
uh,
Vaughn?
Vince Vaughn.
Or
So
was it?
Vince Vaughn, and then Vince Vaughn switches bodies with, like, a high school girl, but Vince Vaughn is like a crazy maniac murderer, like, slasher crazy person, and there's, like, this magic, and they body switch so that the homicidal crazy maniac is now a high school girl having to, like, go through high school girl stuff, and it's really funny.
That
So
sounds
the high
awesome.
school girl is inside Vince Vaughn's body, and it's like he looks like Vince Vaughn, but he's acting like this like 16-year-old girl trying to tell everyone that this body switching thing happened, and the girl that looks like she used to look is actually this psycho killer, and all these people keep getting like all these like jerky jocks and stuff, all these bad people keep getting murdered, and it's really funny. It's like very violent, but it's kind of hilarious. And those are
That
the
is
kind of
great.
horror movies I do like because you're kind of like, that's fun. That's a fun, crazy horror movie.
Yeah, I do love that, like, just yeah, the over the top nature of it and just the like if you could put a comedic spin on it, like, there's this movie that I can't remember the name, but it's like these 2, it's basically like these 2 kind of redneck guys who are they just bought this dilapidated cabin in the woods, and they just wanna go fix it up and fish and hang out, and then these teenagers, this, like, group of teenagers comes and sees the like creepy murder cabin and sees the rednecks and is like, "Oh my god, they're gonna kill us!" And it ends up being this almost like flipping the tropes on its head of like teenagers getting slashed versus like crazy people in the woods killing them. And it's just yeah, it's brilliant and like you just slowly watch like all of the characters
Oh, that sounds great.
transform.
I want to see
Yeah,
that movie.
I know. I wish I could think of the name.
I'll have to Google that because Cabin
Yeah.
in the Woods. I thought Cabin in the Woods was a fantastic movie, and that was one of the first kind of like horror movies, modern comedy, interesting that I've seen. Like a real, and then because I saw that, because that was so good, then I started being more open to what I think seems to be more of a mainstream genre of comedy horror. That is, it's being more accepted in the like mainstream, like people are going to the theaters to see some of this over the top stuff. But Cabin in
Yeah.
the Woods was such a clever, turning it on its, the idea on its head. So it's not typical. It is the typical tropes, but it's in this weird environment that you figure out later that's so much weirder and deeper. And I thought that was so interesting and so
Yeah, I
funny.
love that one too. Yeah.
Did anything not make it in the book that you have stored for maybe another one?
Yeah, there was a lot of different movies that there was I'm trying let's see. There was Speed, the Keanu Reeves bus movie.
That was just on television and I got sucked into it. It was on like network television. It was on like one of the, AMC or something on a weekend, and it was on, with commercials. Like it was like so annoying. And I was just like, I got glued. That
I know.
movie glues you to the screen. It's
They
so simple, and Keanu Reeves is so good
Yeah, it's
because
like
no emotion. He's like, oh, okay, this is what we have to do. We're out of the highway's not finished. We're gonna have to jump it. What's the gap? It's like a 60-foot gap. All right. I want you to floor it. And it's just like, everyone get to the other side of the bus. It's like, what? But the way that he delivers these lines, you just go with it. You're just like, okay.
right? I know. I feel like they don't make movies like that anymore that are just the like simple, ridiculous premise,
Yeah.
action drama, and just,
Yeah,
yeah.
now everything is really complicated and it's always so convoluted, or there's aliens, or there's monsters, or there's something that's really a lot of details. But with Speed, no details. It was just, there's a bomb on the bus. If it drops under 55, it's going to explode. And they have the girl that lost her driver's license for speeding driving this bus. And it's just so simple. It's so simple.
It's great, and it's just like this. It's very the like suspension of disbelief. Like, who cares how ridiculous the premise is? Like, we immediately believe it. We're like, yeah, that bus is gonna blow up if it goes below
Yeah.
50 miles an hour. Like, Keanu Reeves needs to do something. So yeah,
And when it makes the jump, I'm like, is it going to make the jump? And it makes it up. You're like, okay. I mean, maybe it could make the jump. I don't know.
right? Yeah, I'm not a physicist. I don't need to understand the.
Maybe there was a small lift. Maybe there was a bit of a ramp between the two pieces of highway. I don't know. Planes can fly, can't they? They're very heavy. Why can't this bus jump this 60 feet?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
what was the article that you were going to write about Speed about?
Yeah, so I was trying to do something about like LA public transit activists being like, this is what happens when you don't put dedicated busways, and traffic is at a standstill because if we just had better public transportation, the bus would be zipping through the city. It wouldn't even be a problem. So
That's a
yeah, it was,
great. There wouldn't have been any of this problem. They wouldn't be looking for a place to drive in circles for hours. Very true. That's
yeah.
great. That's a great idea. There's so many more movies for you to write about, Carlos. I'm excited to
I
find out what
yeah.
the next ones are going to be. You definitely have to do some Indiana Jones.
Yeah, there
Definitely,
was some.
I'm expecting some Barbie. I'm expecting some Oppenheimer. I mean, there's a lot of good movies out now. Mission Impossible. Did you do any Mission Impossible stuff in the book?
I didn't, and there's definitely a possibility for that one, especially now. There's been so many movies.
Isn't it crazy? Because I feel like I blinked on like, maybe I watched the first two and then I just didn't see them for a while. And now they're back and they're like, Mission 14. I'm like, how many movies of these have they been? And when do they make them? I don't remember them all coming out
Yeah,
this
that's
fast.
how I felt about the Fast and the Furious, which I wrote about for the book and was like, oh my god, I have to watch 9 of these, like
But do people count Tokyo Drift? I don't know if they do.
Yeah, I guess not. But then the characters from Tokyo Drift end up in like Fast 8, and you're like, wait, who are these people again? Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, they were in this one. And yeah, so it's that's a whole. I mean, yeah, if we thought Marvel was an impressive cinematic universe, the like Fast and Furious
Yeah, it's
franchise is
incredible that
rich.
they've made an entire fast universe of just these people who just keep on driving these cars really fast and jumping over things. Now that would be a fun crossover if there was the speed bus for some reason just like showed up in a fast movie. Like that old like Santa Monica bus where you're just like, why is this bus so old in this movie? Don't they have
Right.
more modern buses than that bus that they're driving?
That's so true. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, I need to go watch a fast movie. I think I only saw the first one and now they've made like 1,000 of them and there's a whole world. I mean, I think they could have their own channel at this point. There's like a Fast and Furious network that just shows these movies constantly.
Seriously.
Um, it's wonderful. What do you have up coming up next? Do you have anything in the pipeline that you're waiting to get published?
Yeah, so I mean, just working, continue to do some short humor pieces, and I have a short story that I've been working on, trying to do like more getting into like short stories and personal essays, and just kind of trying to do like other other types of writing and submitting to like literary magazines and that
So
sort
like
of thing.
kind of longer stuff.
Yeah, some longer stuff, and then yeah, honestly, if like I have enough ideas for a sequel, I would probably do a sequel to this book, because I like I said, it was just the most fun
A
I've,
good
I've ever
movie
had
needs a
writing.
sequel, Carlos. A good
Exactly, yeah.
exactly.
So a good book needs a sequel too. So
What are your are you thinking about maybe writing a book like a novel, like a story, like a completely like a fictional book?
yeah, I have a few very loose ideas that hasn't turned into anything, but that would also be super fun. I think a novel would be. It's just such a daunting task. I'm like, that was one thing about this book, is that like it's very digestible,
Yeah.
and for me it was like, okay, I can break this down one at a time, and I can just do 1,000 words at a time, and a novel is another. That's another leap,
But
but
so many of these movies, especially the Jurassic Parks, were incredibly popular books. Michael Crichton just churned out these books, and so many of his books were turned into other things, right? So, that's kind of where it all starts, is just making a book, and then it can become any I mean, like, I think Michael Crichton wrote a book that turned into ER. I think that's true. And
oh yeah,
then
I believe that.
Jurassic Park, obviously, but there were so many of the books became movies, and then so many of the books, became popular movies. Like, I mean, all those Dan Brown books, right? Like people just ate those up. So
Right.
I'm thinking that you've done the research in writing this book. You had to watch so many movies that you know how a great movie goes. So you should know exactly. Like I have the knowledge now to create a book that then can be turned into a blockbuster movie, because you kind of have that at your disposal at this point. Your engineering brain has absorbed the perfect formula for a blockbuster movie at this point.
That's a great point. And yeah, I mean, I wrote a book about movies, so a movie that's based on the book. That's the next.
We could make yeah, there could be maybe a movie based on because it's almost like doing a UHF, right? Where it's almost like a parody or a parody movie about a whole bunch of movies. That would be interesting too, like almost like a Zucker brother, like a Naked Gun parody, but you're just making a parody movie based on all of the popular films jokes that you're making fun of in this.
Yeah,
You're
it's like
almost
Scary Movie,
it's like a
basically.
scary movie. It's like a movie spoof. So you're like spoofing a bajillion movies in one book. So basically, you've plucked the jokes out of all of these popular movies in this book. And now all you have to do is create a framework of a narrative outline to insert all of the jokes that you've already written. And then we're
Exactly.
done. I'm so
Yeah.
glad that we've created the next blockbuster comedy for you today, Carlos, right here on Talkward. I'd watch that movie. That would be wonderful. The jokes that you have in this book, if you were able to adapt it into a situation where you were making a big parody spoof of all these popular movies, that would be so funny.
I mean, yeah,
And
I think that could be the next step.
that's the next step. I'm so glad that we brainstorm workshopped this live on the air of the podcast.
Yeah,
And we
seriously.
have two live viewers right now. I don't know if anybody is paying attention who has this on. They maybe just have it on in the background. And oh, someone wrote follow for follow in the chat. I can't
Oh,
follow you right now. We're talking on the podcast. But if anyone actually had any questions for Carlos, you could ask him questions, and he could get back to you immediately with the
that's
power
true.
of the internet. So.
I'm here for the next however long.
Yeah, exactly. What else do you have going on? What's next in the Oh, I did have a question about writers. Do you have any favorite comedy writers who inspired you when you were becoming a comedy writer? Like, who do you look at as like the top?
Yeah. So for me, I think like the shows I always watched growing up was like 30 Rock was a huge one for me, Arrested Development.
Mm.
So Tina Fey has always been like, just up there just in terms of just incredible writing ability, and just going from just having done everything, improv and then sketch and then shows and movies. Like, yeah,
Does
she's
she have a
incredible.
copy of this book?
I
She needs a
I
copy of this book.
if I could get a copy of this book into her hands, that would be amazing.
I think she would love this book. Just the Jurassic Park thing alone is enough to convince someone that this book is worth reading, I think. I mean, so funny about the velociraptors are they're actively eating people, but we're gonna reopen Jurassic Park. You guys can come on back. It's so perfect. And also reading stuff like that where we have a shared experience, like everybody was going through the pandemic at the same time. And then you have a piece of comedy that's like that, the satire like that. Everybody gets that so fast, you know? I think some of the problem with almost all comedy writing is like, who's your audience? Will they get it? What's the niche? Is this too specific? But with so much of the stuff in this book, because it's movie based, like what you said before, it's just like shared knowledge. And that kind of shared knowledge makes something like so broadly enjoyable. And I think that's why this book, I think people are gonna really like this book.
Thanks. Yeah, I tried to write it so there'd be something for everyone,
Definitely.
So.
And I forgot we didn't mention, but you're a occasional Bruno Mars impersonator. So when did that ever happen?
Oh yeah, so that's always been like, my celebrity doppelganger, right? Like,
Have people legit like asked for autographs and stuff to seeing you out? Because I mean, you definitely like you. I mean, he's a handsome guy. You're a handsome guy. You have very similar features, eyes, very similar eyes.
well, thank you. I mean, I think with the right sunglasses and hat, I think I could pull it off. And it's funny because it, like, when I was like younger, like a teenager, it was like Lenny Kravitz was like the go-to reference, and then now, like, it's Bruno Mars. And the like
It's
the
good.
Bruno,
It's aged you down a bit then also. Like,
honestly, right?
it's a better demographic to be in.
Yeah, I'd rather go in that direction than the other direction. No offense to Lenny Kravitz, but so yeah. But yeah, I did like a couple years ago. I did a parody of Masterclass, where it was like all of these different kind of celebrity characters, and I did Bruno Mars, and like my friend was, Yo-Yo Ma doing a masterclass, and another friend of mine was doing Jodie Foster, and it was like just kind of making fun of like all of the masterclass commercials, at least like the YouTube ads for them. It's like it's always so broad. It's
Yeah.
like, to write, you must learn to tell the truth, and it's like, okay, like, yeah. And I'm not to disparage masterclass. I haven't taken a masterclass, so I don't want to like shit all over them, but at least their ads like do not inspire me to think that like we're gonna really dive deep here.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of that. It was like, yeah, I think the Bruno Mars character is like, to make music, you have to want to make music. It's just like,
it's like, are you actually going to get a lesson, or you're excited to see a celebrity on video talk about something? Like
right.
it's basically what you're paying for. And if that's what you want, you could just go to Cameo and get like a D-list celebrity to say, happy birthday to you. If
Right.
that's really what
Same effect for like,
it's the same
yeah,
effect.
a third of the price. Yeah.
Exactly. And you've been doing some writing for The Onion?
Yeah. So I've been contributing
Amazing.
for just over a year, and it's been a blast. And that was always like one of those like high echelon goals that I was like, pipe dream goals that
Yeah.
now it's just awesome to be able to write for them. So it's
It
super
seems
cool.
like you have climbed like all the mountains that you need to be actively climbing, Carlos, and you just have to keep going at it. Like, just the book looks amazing, and it's coming out October 2nd. People can pre-order it now, and then they can start buying hard copies and ebook versions all over the place. People can follow you at Shades of Graves, Greaves, on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Do you do a
Yep.
lot of stuff on the TikTok?
I've been trying to. Honestly, it's been fun getting back to doing video sketches because it was something like I did very early on when I was starting out, and now like I did it back when you would put like a low budget sketch on YouTube and it would get 5 views. And now like you can do that same low budget sketch on TikTok and get millions of views. And so I
Isn't
love
that
the like,
crazy? It's
yeah,
amazing.
I'm like, I wish that was like around 10 years ago, but yeah, that like low budget aesthetic, it's so fun. So I've been enjoying getting back into that.
But do the people that want like you can get a million views, but do they click on stuff you tell them to? That's the big problem.
Yeah, see, I don't know, and I guess it remains to be seen. I've been
We're
kind
gonna
of
see.
trying.
We need to
Yeah,
see if they click on that book link. So we need to figure out ways to get them to click on that book link from the TikTok.
I
Can
know
you put
exactly.
a
I just have
link
to
up?
hold up the book.
There's the link. The link's in the bottom of the description. People can click on it.
So I don't know if it. I don't think it hyperlinks, and I think also like you have
Mm.
to have a certain number of followers to be able to even have like a link tree or anything like that in your bio.
All right.
So I mean, all these social media platforms are designed to keep you on the platform and not
Right.
go navigate to whatever super awesome thing the person is also working on
You have to
somewhere
hold
else.
up you have to hold up, like, a QR code on the screen of the TikTok. I feel like that
Exactly.
like, they make I don't know if they blur that out automatically or something, like,
I wouldn't be surprised.
there's some,
Yeah,
like, Chinese government thing that's like, "No!" And they're like all of a sudden it blurs, and you're like, "I
censored.
get around it, I can't get around it."
Yeah, exactly.
If you just hold up or you casually have, like, a QR code, like, on your T-shirt, and you're just like, "Mhm," and, like, maybe no one sees it. I
Right,
don't
just
know,
stand very
maybe.
still and just like,
Yeah. Or there's,
you
like, a
know
tattoo. Maybe you have, like, a temporary tattoo just on your forehead.
Yeah,
And
there
you're
we
just
go.
like, "Click the link. It's right on my forehead." That would be a
Yeah,
fun one. That would probably get a
exactly.
lot of views if some crazy person put, like, a QR code on their forehead. I'm writing that down to do that later. Weekly humorist, link on my forehead on
That's a good
TikTok.
idea. You heard
Yeah.
it here first.
Lunatic goes crazy on TikTok. Yeah. That'll be tomorrow's headlines. This has been great, Carlos. I'm excited. And, do you do any performing in person? Have you been to New York City to do any of the in-person events? And there's so much, short humor stuff that has happened here. Have you been able to get in on any of that stuff?
I have. I've been down a couple times. I've done the Greener Pastures Variety Hour
Very
is
cool.
super fun, and then I did a show at Caveat.
Love Caveat. Great
Yeah,
place.
Chandler Dean and
Hmm.
Sarah Gruen host Speakeasy, which is super fun. Did that show, and I'll be back in New York on October 23rd for a book launch.
Oh,
And
awesome.
yeah, it's gonna have some great short humor. A bunch of other humor writers are performing,
October
and
23rd in New York City. Where's that going to be?
it'll be at Caveat. So
Oh, perfect. I'm going.
awesome. Yeah.
And
I think
if anyone's listening, you gotta if you're in New York, come to Caveat on October 23rd for a book launch party and buy a book. You're gonna have some books there.
yes, yeah. Plan is to have some
Excellent.
books and a combination of just short humor, some stand up, and then reading from the book and a short Q&A and all that good stuff. And yeah, it should be a really fun time. So I'm looking forward to being back in New York.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for being on Talkward. People need to go follow you at Shades of Graves, but spelled with an E, Aves. Follow him
Yeah.
on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and see if he does the QR code on TikTok. And buy the book October 2nd. You can pre-order it now. It's called Spoiler: Essays That Might Ruin Your Favorite Hollywood Movies. And you gotta read it because it's really funny because I got to read it already. And then check out the book launch party October 23rd at Caveat in New York City. Thank you so much, Carlos Greaves. Congratulations on the book, and I will read some more of your humor very soon. And you got to send me some stuff for Weekly Humorist. I got to get some Carlos Graves on Weekly Humorist. You're so popular. You're in the New Yorker. Give me some rejects. I'm gonna run them on Weekly Humorist.
I've been slacking. Yeah, I think I've been in once with Barbie Armstrong, but
That's right. That's right.
that was a fun one. But
Got to
yeah,
get you
I'll
back in.
I'll send some stuff your way.
Excellent. So nice talking to you. So nice to meet you, video to video face.
Same. Yeah, I know. We've like interacted a bit online, and it's nice to actually like connect in a more personal
A
way.
more
Still not,
personal way. Okay. I will
yeah.
see you October 23rd. Thanks so much for being on Talkward. Follow Carlos, and you can follow Talkward at Talkward Podcast and subscribe to Weekly Humorist at weeklyhumorist.com. Thank you so much for listening to Talkward. We'll see you next time. Bye, 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 Carlos.